I made over 200 faceless videos, followed every tutorial, bought the templates, and last month I deleted my channel. Not paused, I have not archived it. Deleted it. And I want to tell you exactly why, because if you're thinking about starting a faceless YouTube channel right now, or you're already in it and something feels off, this might be the most important thing you watch before you spend another hour in CapCut. Here's what nobody selling you a faceless YouTube course is going to tell you. The window that made this model work quietly closed, and most people didn't notice until it was too late. Not in some dramatic overnight collapse, more like a slow leak. Revenue dropped a little, views plateauing, the algorithm is doing something it never quite used to do. And you keep tweaking thumbnails, adjusting titles, posting more consistently, because that's what every guru said was the fix. Until you realize the tweaks aren't the problem, the model is. Let me take you back to why faceless channels worked in the first place, because this matters. Around 2021 and 2022, YouTube's recommendation algorithm was doing something beautiful for a very specific type of content. Highly produced, topic-driven evergreen videos on subjects people were actively searching for. Finance, self-help, true crime, AI tools, tech news. The idea was elegant. You don't need a face, a personality, or an audience that knows you. You just need good information, decent voiceover, clean stock footage, and the algorithm would find your people. And it worked. Genuinely worked. Channels were pulling in tens of thousands of subscribers in months. Some were making real money. The model had real logic behind it. Nick Nimmin, one of the more honest voices in the YouTube education space, started flagging as early as late 2023 that search-driven content was getting harder to sustain without building something beyond just the topic. He wasn't saying stop, he was saying evolve. Most people selling courses didn't pass that message along, and data from Epidemic Sound's 2024 Creator Report showed that viewer session time, the metric that actually drives revenue and recommendations, was declining fastest. On channels that relied entirely on AI voiceover and stock footage combinations. Not because YouTube penalized them, because viewers started tuning out faster. Retention drops. Retention drops means the algorithm stops pushing. The algorithm stops pushing means the channel flatlines. Think about what you do when you land on a video. Really think about it. You give it maybe 8 seconds before you feel something. Either a reason to stay or a reason to leave. And what makes you stay? Almost always, it's a person. A voice that has weight. Someone who sounds like they've actually lived the thing they're talking about. The faceless model was built on the assumption that information was the product. But YouTube has never really been an information platform. It's always been a people's platform. That gap just took a few years to catch up. Stay with me here, because this next part is where it gets uncomfortable. The faceless YouTube playbook didn't die by accident. It got buried under an avalanche that was completely predictable, and the people who saw it coming kept quiet because they were still selling the shovel. Here's what happened structurally. In 2024 and into 2025, two forces collided simultaneously. First, AI content generation became so accessible that the volume of faceless, template-driven videos exploded. Suddenly, every niche that used to have 50 channels had 500. The same stock clips, the same 11 Labs voices, the same transitions, the same script structure. YouTube's own internal research, which they discussed during the 2024 Creator Insider sessions, pointed toward a measurable drop in watch time for what they internally categorized as low differentiation content. That's their polite way of saying, if your video looks like every other video in the feed, viewers are leaving faster than ever. Second force, YouTube started leaning harder into what their algorithm has always privately rewarded, connection, not just content. The rise of YouTube Shorts pushed personality-first creators into prominence. Long-form podcasts and conversation-style videos exploded. Channels with actual faces, actual voices, actual opinions were eating into the watch time that faceless channels used to own. According to a 2025 analysis by Tubix, a YouTube analytics consultancy, channels in the finance and business niches with on-camera presence retained viewers on average 34% longer per video than comparable faceless channels covering identical topics. That's not a small gap. That's an algorithm gap. That's a revenue gap. That's a growth gap. And here's the part that really bothers me, honestly. The guru economy around faceless YouTube had every incentive to keep selling the dream long after the data shifted. Because the dream is seductive. No camera anxiety, no lighting setup, no worrying about how you look or sound, work from anywhere, post while you sleep, passive income. These are real psychological pain points that real people have, and I understand them because I had them too. But when the people packaging and selling those solutions know the market changed and keep selling anyway, that's not education. That's exploitation dressed up as empowerment. I bought 2 courses in this space. I'm not going to name them, but I want you to know the people selling those courses in 2025 and 2026 have data. They know what's converting on YouTube and what isn't. They're choosing not to update what they teach you. So if Faceless isn't the play anymore, what is? Because I'm not here to tear something down without handing you something better. Let's be clear about something first. Faceless content isn't dead in every form. There's a version of it that still works and a version that doesn't. The version that doesn't work is the fully commoditized AI voiceover, stock footage pipeline on a general topic in a saturated niche. If you're making yet another 7 passive income ideas video with a robot voice over Getty Images footage, the math does not work in 2026. That version is done. But if your Faceless channel has a genuinely distinct angle, a niche so specific that you're the only person covering it at that depth, it can still survive. The problem is, most people aren't in that position. Here's the framework I actually applied when I made my decision, and I want to walk you through it honestly because it might save you a year of your life. Option 1 is to stay faceless, but radically differentiate. This means finding a niche so narrow and so underserved that competition is irrelevant, not personal finance for millennials. That's a highway with 1,000 lanes. I mean something like financial decision-making specifically for freelance veterinary professionals, or productivity systems for single parents running home-based businesses. The more specific, the more your audience feels like you made the video for them. That feeling drives retention. Retention drives the algorithm. If you can find that intersection and own it completely, Faceless people can still breathe. But it requires real research, real expertise, and real patience. Not a course and a content calendar. Option 2 is what I call the hybrid pivot. You keep the production efficiency of a Faceless format, but you introduce a human anchor. Not necessarily your face, though that helps. Maybe it's your real voice instead of AI. Maybe it's original commentary layered over curated clips. Maybe it's a consistent brand character that has a defined personality. The goal is to give viewers something they can attach to beyond just the topic. Think about what channels like Aperture or Cold Fusion built. The visuals are polished, the tone is measured, but there's a human presence threading through every frame. You trust those channels because they feel like someone is behind them. That trust compounds over time in a way that pure information delivery never can. Option 3, this is what I did, is to just go on camera. I know. This is the answer that feels like being told to eat your vegetables. But let me tell you what happened when I made the switch. In the first 4 videos I posted with my face, my average view duration went up by 28%, my comment volume tripled. Not because the content was dramatically better. Some of it was actually rougher in production quality than my Faceless stuff. But people stayed. They argued in the comments. They came back for the next one. They subscribed not because the topic was interesting, but because they wanted to see what I thought next. That is a fundamentally different relationship than anything I built across 200 Faceless videos. And that relationship is the only thing the algorithm cannot replicate, commoditize, or drown out with volume. The fear is real. I won't minimize it. Camera anxiety is legitimate. I still feel it sometimes. But here's the reframe that helped me. You don't need to be polished. You need to be present. There is an enormous audience on YouTube that is exhausted by overly produced content and actively craving authenticity. A genuine human stumbling slightly over a word and recovering will hold attention longer than a perfectly synthesized voice reading a perfect script. Because imperfection signals humanity, and humanity is what people came to YouTube to find. Option 4, if you genuinely cannot or won't go on camera, is to invest the energy into written content instead. A newsletter, a blog, a community. These are places where Faceless, text-based expertise still builds real audiences and real trust. The written word has never required your face. YouTube is increasingly requiring it. One important note, if you're running Faceless content in an enterprise or educational context, corporate training, institutional explainers, brand channels with existing audiences, this analysis is less applicable to you. Those environments have different success metrics and different audience expectations. What I'm talking about is the creator economy, specifically the people who got into Faceless YouTube because someone told them it was a sustainable path to an online income. For that group, the calculus has genuinely changed. Here's the thing I had to sit with after I made this decision. I wasn't just changing a content strategy. I was asking myself why I started making videos in the first place. And when I got honest about that, I realized something uncomfortable. I started Faceless because I was afraid. Not of cameras specifically, but of being wrong in public, of saying something and having my face attached to it, of building something that could be traced back to me if it failed. The Faceless model was, for me, a way of playing the game without fully stepping onto the field. And I think that's true for a lot of people who got into it. Not because it was genuinely the best creative or business decision, but because it felt like a lower risk version of something they actually wanted to do. You're not paranoid for feeling like something in the YouTube advice space isn't adding up. You're not behind for questioning whether the model you followed still makes sense. The people who question the default assumptions are usually the ones who end up building something real. There are millions of creators right now quietly making the same pivot I made for the same reasons, after doing the same math. You're not alone in this. The bigger principle here, beyond YouTube, beyond Faceless versus on camera, is that platforms and algorithms are always moving. What worked 2 years ago requires re-examination today, and what works today will need re-examination again. The creators who survive every algorithm shift are not the ones who found a perfect system. They're the ones who stayed attached to an audience instead of a method. Systems get disrupted. Audiences, if you build them correctly, follow you through the disruption. Your voice, your perspective, your particular way of seeing the thing you care about, that is the only content asset that cannot be replicated at scale. Not by AI, not by a cheaper version of the template you're using, not by the next wave of creators who buy the same course you bought. The most durable thing you can build online in 2026 is trust between a real person and an audience that chose them. Everything else is infrastructure. If this made you think differently about your own channel, or helped you finally make a decision you've been sitting on, drop it in the comments. I want to know where you're at. Still faceless, making the pivot, or never started, and now you're reconsidering. I read every single one, and if you want to follow what I'm building now that I've made the switch, subscribe. Because I'm documenting the whole thing, numbers included, no filters.